This group, that is yet another group, a new group on the Australian scene, and an amazing lead singer. Here are Strange Idols.
I need a black hole to fill up my life. I need someone to tell me wrong from right. My hands are shaking, no help is in sight. My eyes are staring out into the night.
Yeah, we had some good times. Just never made any money.
I'm tired of it. I don't ask much.
In retrospect, looking back on it, it was just a fantastic period. I mean, I actually know it was a fantastic period because I've seen the fruits of our labours. I can listen to the music that we've produced and think, well, geez, I'm very proud of that. In 1977 in England, in the punk revolution, which I managed to mostly miss in 1977, got a telegram from a friend saying there's this band in Melbourne who needs a guitarist, come back. So I did, and that band was called the Riverina Playboys, and it had been formed by two other guys that I played with in a covers band, and it had in it Robert Price and an astonishing songwriter, singer-songwriter, Graham Drendel. We did that for over a year, about 18 months.
Through the Riverina Playboys, I met Peter. Peter was a later addition. We went through a lot of line-up changes and Peter came in later.
So this is 1978. We got punk going in England. It hasn't happened in Australia yet. Yeah. What we got in Australia is country rock.
After that band broke up, I started my own band called The Shades, which was sort of quasi-punk, I guess, and Peter was in a band called The Strange Idols, or they were called Airwaves at the time. We
would still see each other a fair bit, and we wrote a few songs together, did demos together, but I would do them in my band and he would do them in his band, and they'd be quite different. The singer in Airwaves really wasn't good enough to be the lead singer, and eventually the management said we've got to do something about this.
After their singer left, I was asked to join their band, and they had a record deal and stuff, and so I thought I'll go with them.
Victor's friend Kai, who's now the owner of Sing Sing Studios, he had his very first studio at that time called Stone something or other Studios. We used to go down there frequently when we weren't playing. We had free studio time, we do all these demos, experiment with songs. So it was an incredibly creative period. We produced heaps of things, we did lots of different things, and we had lots of gigs. We did demos for EMI, we did demos for Polygram, and eventually he managed to get a deal with Polygram. Signed the deal, recorded, the song that we recorded was one called Tired of Earth, a song that Robert and I had written, which he'd done one way and we'd done another. And Polygram released that as a single sometime in 1982. It got released in Australia and in Holland, we were informed. and as a result of that, the publicity machine got going and we had all the bios done and we appeared on Countdown.
I thought I'd finally arrived, you know, met Molly, but what really disillusioned me about that was when he first introduced us during rehearsal, he said, here's a sensational band and a singer with a fantastic voice, blah blah. And then the next band came on and he introduced them a certain way. When it came around to the actual taping of the show, he introduced them with our introduction and introduced us with their introduction, so it was obvious didn't really know or care. It's just a job. We got banned from Hey Hey It's Saturday.
Now the Hey Hey experience was a memorable one because that was morning. That was when Hey Hey It's Saturday, it's still on the morning, and we, in the typical rock and roll tough tradition, we didn't want to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning because you actually had to be there like at 7:30 or some ridiculous hour in the morning. Maybe it was probably 7 o'clock.
Allegedly, because we were drunk in the dressing rooms at 6:30 in the morning, which is when it used to be on.
They put us in Bert Newton's dressing room, And our roadie, Gravy, found that there was a minibar in there with grog in it, and he, and probably Robert did for all I know too, took a whole bunch of the miniatures and stuff like that and started drinking the whole lot.
Which is a lie.
And we didn't know anything about this, so we did our performance, went out there, and then the next 2 days, 3 days later, at the next rehearsal, Bob turns up and says, "Hey, you know what's happened? You've been banned from Channel 9 forever because you guys took all the grog out of Bert Newton's dressing room." And sure enough, in the trade paper the following week, there's this little gossip bit turns up and says, it actually said Screen Idols, got the name wrong, but Strange Idols were banned from Channel 9 for a rating, blah blah blah. So we actually had it documented in the press the following week. So then, in the theory, after you've got your single out, it should do something. Well, it didn't do something. This thing got into the top 40 on Triple R at that point in time, but it didn't go anywhere. It didn't get picked up by the mainstream. It got played a few times on 3XY. We scored a few sort of commercial radio hits, but not enough to pick it up, so it didn't do well. And then we went around touring and playing more and more. But you've either got to roll on that or not. And what you're really supposed to do then is come up with your second single. But from about 3 or 4 months, maybe 6 months before the single and 6 months after, we went through this bizarre period where our performances would become increasingly erratic. And what I mean by that is we would start off with a set, and then Robert would, in the middle of a song, stop us, and we'd pick something else up, and he would talk to the crowd. He used to run sort of Sale of the Century type quizzes and pretend to give away prizes.
It's Sale of the Century time now. Fortunately for you, we're all members of the Divine Light. None of us drink, none of us smoke, and we'd appreciate it if you'd all stop drinking and smoking. This is a countdown guitar, ladies and gentlemen. It has no strings. Come here, collect your prize. Must be the drugs.
So I think you get the drift from that point. There was a certain point after that he was basically unhappy and he was going to go. And so what happened was he got an offer from Wilbur Wilde.
I sound like a mercenary, I know, but I was offered some money to go and join Wilbur Wilde's big combi. And $150 a week sounded like good money there. And I thought I had a drug problem before then. I was sadly mistaken. I got one then.
I just reached the conclusion that you have a go at these things, you do your bit, but you've got the meaning of life is knowing when to stop, and this was a logical point to stop. So we finished off our final obligations, the final gigs that we had, and so I hung up my guitar, as it were.
The Rattling Sabres, another band I was in with Karen Tolhurst. We had a song called All Fired Up. All fired up, wasted, precious time. All fired up, wasted, your segment. All fired up, EMI in Brisbane and South Australia, in Adelaide. They went crazy with publicity. We toured both places and the publicity was sensational, and we charted in both places. In Melbourne and Sydney, even though we had high rotation airplay and radio, there was no publicity as such. So that's a perfect example of publicity working for us. And we didn't sell a bean in Melbourne and Sydney. And yet Pat Benatar covered that song, had a hit record with it. Our song, and it was #1 or whatever, biggest hit she ever had.
Oh, am I right? Oh, am I right?
Gravy was quite a character, and the roadie's creed of if it's wet, drink it, if it's green, smoke it, if it moves, fuck it, if it doesn't, throw it in the back of the truck. That was exactly our Gravy. And the next thing I heard from him, which was actually, I don't know, about maybe 6 years later, I heard that he was recording an album. Gone to the studio and recorded a complete album with all these big Australian icons all contributing toward it all. It hadn't been finally mixed, but he'd finished all the vocals. Anyway, and he had an accident and he died. So all of a sudden, Gravy is gone. Then the next thing I hear, which was maybe a year or two later, here on the radio, this friend of Gravy's being interviewed because now the album was finished, and even though it was a posthumous release, it was being given this huge publicity because the proceeds were going to go to a youth foundation. And lo and behold, the next week in the Sun Herald, here's this big full-page article on Gravy, and in the fine print down here it says he roadied for Strange Idols. I have this piece of paper. This is my claim to fame, that our roadie was more famous than Strange Idols.
met a lot of famous people. I'm famous myself, I'm glad I'm not.
People who go through bands together end up sort of having memories of the bands which are not unlike diggers, you know, like guys that went off to war, and at the end of that whole exercise, even though you'll drift apart, you still sort of think, well, hey, we connected at this particular point. And it's not dissimilar to guys that have been, you know, platooned in the Second World War or something, and you lived in each other's pocket, you come back and you share war stories. Well, that's what it's all about. Bands are full of war stories.